The galloping hooves echoed across the dusty valley as Zara Montgomery stood frozen on her father's porch, watching the lone rider approach through the heat waves rising from the parched earth. 7 years had passed since she'd seen that silhouette, that particular way a man sat in a saddle like he'd been born there, but her heart recognized him before her mind could form the name that had haunted her dreams: Gabriel Hayes. The summer of 1873 stretched hot and unforgiving across the Montana Territory. Zara's pale blue dress clung to her skin in the afternoon heat as she gripped the porch railing, her knuckles white with tension. She was 23 now, no longer the 16-year-old girl who had watched Gabriel ride away to seek his fortune, promising to return when he had something worthy to offer. "Is that," her father began, stepping out behind her. "Yes," Zara whispered, unable to tear her gaze away from the approaching figure. "It's Gabe." Thomas Montgomery cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Your betrothal ceremony to Mr. Harrington is in 3 days, Zara." The reminder felt like a physical blow. Frederick Harrington, the railroad magnate who had saved their ranch from foreclosure 5 years ago with the promise that Zara would become his wife when she turned 24. The promise her father had made when they'd had nothing left but debt and desperation. "I know my obligations, father," she said, but her voice trembled. Gabriel's horse slowed as he approached the ranch house, dust swirling around horse and rider. He looked different, harder, more weathered. The boyish softness in his face had been carved away, leaving sharp angles and sun-darkened skin. A thin scar ran along his jawline that hadn't been there before. But his eyes, those remarkable green eyes that had once looked at her with such tenderness, were unchanged. He removed his hat as he came to a stop, revealing dark hair streaked with gold from the sun. "Mr. Montgomery," he nodded respectfully before his gaze settled on Zara. "Miss Montgomery," the formality stung. Once she had been simply Zara on his lips, spoken with a reverence that made her name sound like a prayer. "What brings you back to Timber Creek, Hayes?" Thomas asked, his tone clipped. Gabriel's expression remained carefully neutral. "I've purchased the old Watson property to the west of your land." His eyes never left Zara's face as he spoke. "I've come home for good." "The Watson place," Thomas looked genuinely surprised. "That's over 2,000 acres. 2,300, Gabriel confirmed. Good cattle land." Zara felt dizzy. The Watson property had been abandoned for years, considered too expensive and too difficult to manage without significant resources. Gabriel had left Timber Creek with nothing but his horse and the clothes on his back. "You've done well for yourself," Thomas observed carefully. "Well enough." Gabriel finally broke his gaze from Zara to address her father directly. "I spent 4 years in Colorado, found silver, made investments, learned the cattle business from the ground up." Thomas nodded slowly. "I see." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Gabriel replaced his hat and gathered the reins. "I should be on my way. Just wanted to introduce myself as your new neighbor." His eyes found Zara's again. "I'll be seeing you around, Miss Montgomery." Before either could respond, he turned his horse and rode toward the property line that separated the Montgomery ranch from what was now his land. Thomas turned to his daughter, his expression grave. "Zara, whatever was between you two was a long time ago," she finished for him, even as her heart raced traitorously in her chest. "I understand my responsibilities, father." But as she watched Gabriel's retreating figure, she wondered if she truly did. The next morning found Zara at the creek that marked the boundary between their properties, a place she had visited almost daily since childhood. The cool water had always calmed her thoughts, but today her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. She knelt by the water's edge, trailing her fingers through the clear current, when the sound of approaching footsteps made her turn. Gabriel stood several yards away, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I thought I might find you here," he said, moving closer but maintaining a respectful distance. "You always came here when you needed to think." "Some habits don't change," she replied, rising to her feet and smoothing her skirts, "and some do." Gabriel's eyes traveled over her face, taking in the changes that 7 years had wrought. "You're engaged." It wasn't a question, but Zara nodded anyway. To Frederick Harrington, the railroad man from Boston. There was no mistaking the edge in his voice. He saved our ranch, she said defensively. After the drought of '68, we were going to lose everything. Gabriel's jaw tightened, and your hand in marriage was the price. Anger flashed through her. Not all of us had the luxury of walking away, Gabriel. Some of us had responsibilities that couldn't be abandoned. Is that what you think I did? Abandon my responsibilities? His voice was quiet but intense. I left to build something worthy of you, Zara. I promised I'd come back when I could offer you more than the life of a poor rancher's wife. You promised a lot of things, she said, hating the tremor in her voice. But promises don't keep a roof over your head or food on the table. Mr. Harrington offered security when we had none. Gabriel took a step closer. And does he offer you happiness? The question hung in the air between them. Zara looked away, focusing on the rippling water of the creek. Happiness is a luxury, Gabriel. Survival comes first. Look at me, he demanded softly. When she did, he continued, I made a fortune in the silver mines of Colorado. I've built a cattle operation that spans 3 territories. I came back for you, Zara, just like I promised. You're 7 years too late, she whispered. He moved closer still, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Am I? Before she could answer, he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers gently touched her cheek. The day I left, you told me your heart would wait for me. Was that a lie? Zara closed her eyes against the rush of emotions his touch evoked. It doesn't matter what my heart wants. I gave my word. It matters to me, he said, his voice rough with feeling. It's the only thing that matters. She stepped back, breaking the contact. I'm to be married in 3 days, Gabriel. Whatever was between us belongs in the past. His expression hardened. Do you love him? I respect him, she answered carefully. He's been kind to me and generous to my family. That's not what I asked. Zara lifted her chin. It's the only answer I can give you. Gabriel studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. 3 days is a long time, Zara Montgomery. Not long enough to change what must be, she replied. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. I didn't come back just to be your neighbor. I came back to claim what's mine. She looked over her shoulder at him. I don't belong to anyone, Gabriel Hayes. A slow smile curved his lips. I wasn't talking about you, Zara. I was talking about my heart. You've had it since we were 18, and I've come to take it back or to give you the rest of me to go with it. Before she could formulate a response, he tipped his hat and walked away, leaving her standing by the creek with her certainties crumbling around her. When Zara returned to the ranch, she found her father in deep conversation with Sheriff James Wilson. Both men fell silent as she entered, their expressions grim. What's happened? She asked, dread pooling in her stomach. The sheriff removed his hat. Miss Montgomery, I was just informing your father about some trouble brewing. Frederick Harrington's business partner, Victor Blackwood, arrived in town this morning with 6 men. They're staying at the hotel, but they've been asking questions about Gabriel Hayes. What kind of questions? Zara asked. The kind that suggests they have unfinished business, the sheriff replied carefully. Bad business. Thomas frowned. What does Harrington's partner want with Hayes? According to the bartender at the Timber Creek Saloon, Blackwood claims Hayes stole from their mining operation in Colorado before disappearing with a fortune that wasn't rightfully his. Zara's heart sank. That's not possible. Gabriel wouldn't. We don't know what Hayes would or wouldn't do, her father interrupted. We haven't seen him in 7 years. The sheriff replaced his hat. I just thought you should know, given your connection to both parties. I'll be keeping an eye on things, but tensions are running high. Blackwood isn't the type of man who travels with armed companions unless he intends to use them. After the sheriff departed, Thomas turned to his daughter with concern etched on his weathered face. Zara, whatever your feelings for Hayes might be, you need to stay away from him until this is resolved. Your future with Harrington is too important to jeopardize. Do you believe these accusations? She asked. Thomas sighed heavily. I don't know what to believe. The boy I knew wouldn't have stolen anything, but men change, especially when fortune and ambition are involved. I need to warn him, Zara said, moving toward the door. Her father caught her arm. You'll do no such thing. Harrington arrives tomorrow for the wedding. How do you think he'll react if he finds his bride to be rushing to warn another man about his business partner's accusations? This isn't about my feelings for Gabriel, she insisted. This is about a man's life potentially being in danger. The sheriff will handle it, Thomas said firmly. Your place is here, preparing for your wedding. Zara pulled her arm free, frustration building within her. My place. My place has been decided by everyone but me for years now. I agreed to marry Mr. Harrington to save our ranch, but that doesn't mean I surrender my conscience as well. Her father's expression softened. I know this hasn't been easy for you, daughter, but Harrington is a good man who can provide security and comfort beyond anything you could have here. That's worth something. Is it worth a man's life? She challenged. We don't know that Hayes is in any real danger, Thomas countered. Blackwood may simply want to question him. Men who bring armed companions aren't looking for conversation, Zara said, echoing the sheriff's assessment. Before her father could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Thomas opened it to find one of their ranch hands, a young man named Billy, standing on the porch with an envelope. Ryder brought this for Miss Montgomery, Billy said, handing over the envelope. Said it was important. Thomas thanked him and closed the door, examining the envelope before reluctantly passing it to Zara. It's from Harrington. Zara broke the seal and unfolded the letter, reading quickly. Her eyes widened as she processed the contents. Mr. Harrington has been delayed in Denver. Business matters. He won't arrive until the day of the wedding, Thomas frowned. That's cutting it close. The ceremony is scheduled for noon. He says he'll be here by morning and ready for the ceremony, Zara said, folding the letter carefully. He also mentions that his partner, Mr. Blackwood, will handle any preparations in his absence. Her father's frown deepened. I don't like the sound of that. Blackwood has a reputation that precedes him, and it isn't a favorable one. All the more reason to warn Gabriel, Zara insisted. If Blackwood is handling Harrington's affairs, he has authority he might abuse. Thomas studied his daughter's determined expression. You care for Hayes still, after all these years? It wasn't a question, but Zara answered anyway. Some feelings don't fade with time, father. But this isn't about that. It's about doing what's right. After a long moment, Thomas nodded reluctantly. Write him a note. I'll have Billy deliver it. But Zara, don't go yourself. Promise me. She hesitated before agreeing. I promise. But as she penned the warning to Gabriel, Zara knew some promises were made to be broken. Night had fallen by the time Zara slipped out of the ranch house. She had waited until her father retired before saddling her mare, Willow, and riding toward the Watson property. The moon hung full in the sky, illuminating the trail well enough that she could travel at a decent pace. Gabriel's warning note remained unopened on her desk. Billy had returned with troubling news. No one had answered at the main house of the Watson property, and he'd been unwilling to leave the note where anyone might find it. Concern had gnawed at Zara throughout the evening until she could bear it no longer. As she approached Gabriel's property, she slowed Willow to a walk, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. A light glowed in the window of the main house, a sturdy two-story structure that had been empty for years. Smoke curled from the chimney, suggesting Gabriel was home. She dismounted at a distance and approached on foot, tethering Willow to a fence post. As she neared the house, the door suddenly opened and Gabriel emerged with a rifle in his hands. Who's there? He called into the darkness, his voice tense. It's me, Zara answered, stepping into the pool of light spilling from the doorway. Gabriel lowered the rifle immediately, his expression shifting from wariness to concern. Zara, what are you doing here alone at this hour? I needed to warn you, she said, moving closer. Frederick Harrington's business partner is in town with armed men. They're looking for you, Gabriel. They're saying you stole from their mining operation in Colorado. A muscle ticked in his jaw as he processed this information. You rode out here in the middle of the night to tell me this. I sent a note earlier, but no one was here to receive it, she explained. I was worried. Gabriel glanced around the darkened yard before ushering her inside and closing the door. The interior of the house was sparsely furnished but clean, with a fire burning in the hearth and lamps casting a warm glow over the main room. You shouldn't have come, he said, setting the rifle aside. If your father or Harrington discovered you were here, Mr. Harrington has been delayed in Denver, she interrupted. He won't arrive until the morning of the wedding, but his partner, Victor Blackwood, is handling his affairs in the meantime. Gabriel's expression darkened at the name. Blackwood, I should have known he'd be involved. So you do know him, Zara observed, studying Gabriel's reaction closely. I know him, Gabriel confirmed grimly, and the accusations aren't entirely false. Zara felt her heart sink. You stole from them? No, Gabriel's voice was firm. I discovered that Blackwood and Harrington were swindling their investors and mistreating their workers. Men died in those mines because of corners they cut, Zara. I gathered evidence of their fraud and took it to the territorial authorities. Relief washed over her. So you were a whistleblower, not a thief. In their eyes, exposing their scheme was the same as stealing their fortune, Gabriel explained. The investigation cost them contracts and investors. They lost a significant amount of money and barely escaped prosecution. And now they've found you, Zara said, understanding dawning. That's why you really came back to Timber Creek, isn't it? You're hiding. Gabriel's eyes flashed with anger. I'm not hiding. I came back for exactly the reason I told you to claim what's mine. He moved closer, his gaze intense. Yes, I knew Blackwood and Harrington would eventually track me down, but I wasn't going to let fear keep me from returning to the only place that ever felt like home, to the only woman who ever felt like home. The sincerity in his voice made Zara's breath catch. Gabriel. Tell me you don't feel it too, he challenged, taking another step toward her. Tell me you don't lie awake at night remembering what we were to each other. It doesn't matter what I feel, she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. I made a promise. A promise made under duress isn't binding, Gabriel argued. Your father was desperate, and Harrington took advantage of that desperation to buy himself a beautiful young wife. Anger flared within her. You make it sound so sordid. Mr. Harrington saved our ranch when no one else would help. He's been nothing but respectful toward me. Has he ever asked what you want, Zara? Has he ever considered that you might have dreams of your own that don't include being the trophy wife of a man twice your age? The questions struck too close to home. You left, she reminded him, her voice breaking slightly. You left, and I had to find a way to survive. Gabriel's expression softened. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand gently cupped her cheek. I'm sorry I wasn't here when you needed me. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving again, not without you. The warmth of his palm against her skin broke something loose inside her. 7 years of carefully constructed defenses began to crumble as she leaned into his touch. I've missed you, she whispered, the admission torn from somewhere deep inside her. Every day for 7 years I've missed you. With a groan, Gabriel pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. Zara melted against him, her arms winding around his neck as years of longing and suppressed emotion poured out between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. Run away with me, he murmured. Tonight. We can be halfway to Wyoming by morning. Reality crashed back upon her like a bucket of cold water. I can't, she said, pulling away reluctantly. My father's ranch, our entire livelihood depends on this marriage. If I run away, Harrington will take everything. My father will be left with nothing. Frustration flickered across Gabriel's face. There has to be another way. If there is, we haven't found it in 5 years, Zara said sadly. Gabriel paced the room, running a hand through his hair. What if I bought out Harrington's interest in your ranch? I have the resources now. He doesn't want money, Zara explained. He wants a wife, specifically me. The agreement was never just about financial investment. It was a contract for marriage. A contract that should be null and void now that you know the kind of man he really is, Gabriel insisted. Zara, he and Blackwood have blood on their hands. The workers who died in those mines, their deaths were preventable. They cut safety measures to increase profits. Zara felt sick at the revelation. Do you have proof of this? Documents, witness statements, everything I took to the authorities, Gabriel confirmed. It's all hidden where they can't find it. The investigation stalled because key witnesses were paid off or threatened, but the evidence still exists. A plan began to form in Zara's mind. If Mr. Harrington is truly guilty of such things. Perhaps there's leverage to be found. Blackwood is dangerous, Gabriel warned. If he suspects you know anything, he won't hesitate to silence you. Then we need to be careful, she said, determination hardening her resolve. But I need to return home before my absence is discovered. Gabriel caught her hand as she moved toward the door. Promise me you won't confront Harrington or Blackwood alone. Promise me you'll be careful. The concern in his eyes warmed her. I promise. He pulled her close once more, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. 2 days, he murmured against her lips. We have 2 days to find a way out of this. 2 days, she agreed, reluctantly pulling away. I'll try to send word tomorrow. As she mounted Willow and rode back toward her father's ranch, Zara's mind raced with possibilities and dangers. Behind her, Gabriel watched until she disappeared into the darkness, unaware that other eyes were also tracking her departure from the shadows beyond the house. Dawn was breaking as Zara slipped back into the ranch house, relieved to find it still quiet. She had almost reached her room when her father's voice stopped her cold. "Where have you been?" Thomas asked, emerging from the kitchen with a cup of coffee in his hand. Zara turned slowly, mind racing for a plausible explanation. "I couldn't sleep. I went for a ride to clear my head." Thomas studied her with weary eyes. "You went to see Hayes, didn't you?" There was no point in lying. "Yes." Her father sighed heavily, setting down his cup. "Zara, do you understand what's at stake here? Harrington has invested thousands in this ranch. If you break your agreement with him, what if he's not the man we thought he was?" Zara interrupted. "What if there's more to Frederick Harrington than the generous benefactor he's presented himself as?" Thomas frowned. "What are you talking about?" Zara hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. "Gabriel says Harrington and his partner Blackwood were involved in fraudulent business practices in Colorado. That men died because of safety measures they ignored to increase profits." "And you believe him?" Thomas asked skeptically. "A man who conveniently returns just days before your wedding with accusations against your fiancé." "I believe Gabriel is telling the truth," Zara said firmly. "And I think we need to learn more about the man I'm supposed to marry before I commit my life to him." Before Thomas could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. When he opened it, Sheriff Wilson stood on the porch, his expression grave. "Thomas, Miss Montgomery," he greeted them with a nod. "I'm afraid I have troubling news. There was an incident at the Watson property last night. Someone fired shots at the main house." Zara's blood ran cold. Was anyone hurt?" "Hayes wasn't home when it happened," the sheriff assured her, and she nearly sagged with relief. "But his foreman took a bullet in the shoulder. He'll recover, but it was a close call." "Do you know who's responsible?" Thomas asked. Sheriff Wilson's expression hardened. "No witnesses have come forward, but I have my suspicions. Blackwood and 2 of his men were seen riding in that direction yesterday evening." "This is outrageous," Thomas exclaimed. "Attempted murder in our community. Without witnesses willing to testify, there's little I can do officially," the sheriff admitted. "But I've sent word to the territorial marshal. He should arrive by tomorrow." After the sheriff departed, Thomas turned to his daughter with newfound concern. "If what Hayes told you is true and Blackwood is willing to resort to violence, then I can't marry Frederick Harrington," Zara finished for him. "I won't tie myself to a man associated with such violence and corruption." Thomas ran a hand over his face. "It's not that simple, Zara. We can't prove these allegations, and without Harrington's financial support, we'll lose everything." "There has to be another way," she insisted. Echoing Gabriel's words from the previous night, her father looked at her with sympathy. "I wish there was. But unless a miracle occurs in the next 2 days, your wedding will proceed as planned." Later that morning, a carriage bearing the Harrington Company logo arrived at the ranch. Zara watched from the window as Victor Blackwood descended, a tall, imposing figure in an expensive suit. His dark hair was slicked back from a high forehead, and a neatly trimmed beard framed his sharp features. "Miss Montgomery," he greeted her with a bow when Thomas showed him into the parlor. "A pleasure to finally make your acquaintance. Frederick has spoken of your beauty, but his descriptions failed to do you justice." There was something calculating in his smile that made Zara's skin crawl. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand you'll be representing Mr. Harrington until his arrival tomorrow. Indeed. Blackwood settled into a chair, accepting the coffee Thomas offered. Frederick was most distressed at the delay, but business matters required his personal attention. He asked me to ensure all wedding preparations are proceeding smoothly. Everything is in order, Thomas assured him. The minister is prepared, and the celebration afterward will be modest but appropriate. Blackwood nodded approvingly. Excellent. Frederick mentioned his desire to depart for Boston immediately following the ceremony. I trust that arrangement is still acceptable. Zara felt her heart sink. She had known Harrington planned to take her east, but the immediacy of it struck her anew. So soon. I had hoped for time to properly bid farewell to friends and neighbors. Business demands, my dear, Blackwood said with a dismissive wave. Frederick has important meetings scheduled that cannot be delayed. I'm sure you understand the obligations that come with being the wife of a man of his stature. Before Zara could respond, Blackwood's attention shifted. I understand Gabriel Hayes has returned to Timber Creek. An unexpected development. The casual tone didn't mask the predatory interest in his eyes. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Hayes purchased the Watson property. Beyond that, his business is his own. Of course, Blackwood agreed smoothly, though I wonder if you're aware of his questionable business practices in Colorado. Frederick and I had quite unpleasant dealings with him. The sheriff mentioned there was an incident at the Watson property last night, Zara said, watching Blackwood's reaction carefully. Someone shot Hayes's foreman. Not a flicker of surprise crossed Blackwood's face. How unfortunate. The West can be such a dangerous place. One of the many reasons Frederick is eager to bring you to the civilization and safety of Boston. The implied threat hung in the air. After Blackwood departed, promising to return the following day with Harrington, Zara turned to her father with renewed determination. You see it now, don't you? She asked. What kind of men they truly are, Thomas nodded slowly, his expression troubled. I see it. But seeing doesn't change our situation, Zara. Without Harrington's investment, we lose everything. I'd rather lose the ranch than my life to a man like that, she said firmly. Her father's eyes widened. You think he would harm you? I think a man who would shoot an innocent ranch hand wouldn't hesitate to deal harshly with a disobedient wife, Zara replied, and I've never been particularly obedient. Despite the gravity of the situation, Thomas smiled faintly. No, you never have been. His smile faded. But what choice do we have? Zara squeezed her father's hand. Let me speak with Gabriel. He mentioned having evidence of Harrington and Blackwood's crimes. Perhaps there's a way to use that to our advantage. Thomas considered this. It's dangerous, Zara. Marrying Frederick Harrington seems more dangerous by the hour, she countered. After a long moment, her father nodded. Be careful, and don't go alone this time. With Thomas's reluctant blessing, Zara rode to the Watson property accompanied by Billy, their most trusted ranch hand. The mid-afternoon sun beat down on them as they approached the main house, which now showed signs of the previous night's violence. Bullet holes marred the front porch, and one window had been shattered. Gabriel emerged at the sound of their approach, rifle in hand. When he recognized Zara, relief washed over his features, followed quickly by concern. You shouldn't have come, he said as she dismounted. Blackwood's men could still be watching. I needed to see you were safe, she replied. The sheriff told us about the shooting. Gabriel nodded grimly. Jacob will recover, but it was a clear message. Blackwood wants me to know he can get to me anytime he chooses. Blackwood visited our ranch this morning, Zara told him. He all but admitted responsibility for the attack, and he made it clear that Harrington intends to take me to Boston immediately after the wedding tomorrow. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Then we're running out of time. You mentioned having evidence of their crimes, Zara said. Could it be enough to stop Harrington from taking our ranch if I refuse to marry him? Possibly, Gabriel conceded. But using it means exposing everything, including my role as informant. It could put all of us in danger. We're already in danger, she pointed out. At least this way we'd be fighting back. Gabriel studied her determined expression before nodding slowly. The evidence is hidden in a lockbox at the Territorial Bank in Helena. I'd need to retrieve it, which means riding through the night. Then go, Zara urged. If you leave now, you could return by morning and leave you unprotected. Gabriel shook his head. Blackwood would see it as an opportunity. I won't be unprotected, she assured him, gesturing to Billy and the ranch hands at her father's disposal. And the sheriff is watching Blackwood closely. This may be our only chance. After further discussion and careful planning, Gabriel agreed. He would ride for Helena immediately while Zara returned to the ranch to maintain appearances. Be careful, she said as he prepared to depart. Blackwood wouldn't hesitate to ambush you on the road. Gabriel cupped her face gently. I've spent years outmaneuvering men like Blackwood. Trust me to return to you. I do trust you, she whispered. I always have. Their parting kiss was brief but filled with promise. As Zara watched Gabriel ride away, she prayed they weren't making a terrible mistake. The following morning, her wedding day dawned bright and clear. Zara stood at her bedroom window, watching the road for any sign of Gabriel or Frederick Harrington. Neither had appeared by the time her father knocked on her door. Zara, are you decent? There's someone here to see you, her heart leaped. Gabriel, no, Thomas said, his voice tight with tension. Sheriff Wilson, and he has news you need to hear. Dread pooled in Zara's stomach as she quickly finished dressing and joined her father and the sheriff in the parlor. Sheriff Wilson removed his hat as she entered, his expression grave. Miss Montgomery, I'm afraid there's been another incident. Frederick Harrington's train was delayed further due to a bridge collapse outside of Denver. He won't arrive until tomorrow at the earliest. Relief washed over her, followed immediately by suspicion. That seems remarkably convenient for Mr. Blackwood, doesn't it? First the shooting at Gabriel's ranch, and now Harrington is delayed again, leaving his partner in charge on my wedding day. The sheriff nodded grimly. My thoughts exactly, which is why I've been asking questions in town. It seems Blackwood sent a telegram yesterday not to Denver, but to a certain individual known to provide services of a permanent nature. Thomas paled. You're suggesting Blackwood has hired an assassin. I'm suggesting we proceed with extreme caution, the sheriff corrected. Especially given that Hayes rode out alone yesterday and hasn't been seen since. Fear clutched at Zara's heart. You think something's happened to Gabriel? I can't say for certain, Sheriff Wilson admitted, but the timing concerns me. Blackwood has been asking about both of you, Miss Montgomery, specifically about your relationship with Hayes. Thomas moved to his daughter's side protectively. What do you recommend we do, Sheriff? Cancel the wedding preparations, Wilson advised. Cite Harrington's absence as the reason. And stay close to the ranch until we know more. I've sent for additional deputies from the next county, but they won't arrive until this evening. After the sheriff departed, Zara paced the parlor anxiously. I shouldn't have let Gabriel go alone. If Blackwood has harmed him, we don't know that, Thomas reminded her gently. Hayes is capable and cautious. He may simply be delayed. Or he could be lying dead somewhere between here and Helena, Zara said, voicing her deepest fear. A knock at the door interrupted them. Thomas answered it cautiously, then stepped aside to admit Victor Blackwood, who swept into the room with the confidence of a man accustomed to commanding attention. Mr. Montgomery, Miss Montgomery, he greeted them with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I've come to escort the bride to town for final preparations. The dressmaker is waiting for a last fitting. There won't be a wedding today, Mr. Blackwood, Thomas informed him firmly. Sheriff Wilson has just informed us that Mr. Harrington's train has been delayed again. Blackwood's smile faltered momentarily before returning, tighter than before. A minor inconvenience. The ceremony can proceed with me standing in as Frederick's proxy. It's quite common in business arrangements of this nature. This is not merely a business arrangement, Zara objected, anger overcoming her fear. It's a marriage, and I will not exchange vows with a proxy. Blackwood's expression hardened. I'm afraid I must insist. The documents have been prepared, and Frederick has invested considerable resources in this union. Delays are unacceptable. Nevertheless, there will be a delay, Thomas stated, moving to stand beside his daughter, at least until Mr. Harrington arrives in person. A dangerous light entered Blackwood's eyes. Perhaps you misunderstand the nature of your agreement with Frederick. Your continued ownership of this ranch is contingent upon the fulfillment of your daughter's obligation. "Are you threatening us, Mr. Blackwood?" Thomas asked quietly. "Merely clarifying the situation," Blackwood replied smoothly. "Frederick has been patient these past 5 years while Miss Montgomery came of age. His patience has limits." "As does mine," came a voice from the doorway. All three turned to see Gabriel standing there, dusty from the road but very much alive. Relief flooded through Zara so intensely she nearly swayed on her feet. Blackwood's hand moved toward his coat, but Gabriel was faster, his revolver appearing as if by magic. "I wouldn't," Gabriel warned softly. "Hayes," Blackwood acknowledged with a sneer, "still interfering in matters that don't concern you." "Zara concerns me," Gabriel replied steadily, "and so does justice for the men who died in your mines." Understanding dawned on Blackwood's face. "You were the informant. Frederick suspected as much." "I was," Gabriel confirmed. "And I've just returned from Helena with all the evidence the territorial marshal needs to arrest both you and Harrington for fraud, negligence resulting in death, and witness tampering." Blackwood's composure cracked. "You're bluffing. That evidence was destroyed. Copies were made," Gabriel informed him with grim satisfaction. "Currently in the hands of both the territorial marshal and the federal authorities in Denver." Rage contorted Blackwood's features. He lunged for Zara, clearly intending to use her as a shield, but Thomas moved faster than anyone would have expected from a man his age. He tackled Blackwood to the ground as Gabriel rushed forward to help subdue him. In the struggle, Blackwood managed to draw a small derringer from his vest. A shot rang out, and Thomas cried out in pain, clutching his arm. Gabriel knocked the weapon from Blackwood's hand and delivered a blow that rendered him unconscious. "Father," Zara rushed to Thomas's side, examining the wound with trembling hands. "We need the doctor." "It's just a graze," Thomas assured her, though pain lined his face. "I've had worse from breaking horses." Gabriel quickly bound the wound with a handkerchief while Zara sent one of the ranch hands for the doctor and another for the sheriff. Within an hour, Blackwood was in custody, and Thomas was resting comfortably under the doctor's care. "The marshal will arrive by nightfall," Sheriff Wilson informed them after taking Blackwood to the jail. "Based on the evidence Hayes provided, both Blackwood and Harrington will face serious charges." "What about the ranch?" Thomas asked from his position on the sofa. "Without Harrington's investment." "The investment was made," Gabriel pointed out. "And the agreement was that Zara would marry him when she turned 24. Since Harrington will likely be spending the foreseeable future in prison, I'd say the agreement is null and void." "He could still try to claim ownership," Thomas worried. Gabriel smiled. "Not according to the territorial judge who reviewed the documents this morning. Harrington's claim was contingent upon the marriage taking place. No marriage, no claim." Hope dawned on Thomas's face. "You mean we keep the ranch free and clear?" "The ranch is yours," Gabriel confirmed. "Though it might need some additional investment to thrive." "An investment you're prepared to make," Thomas guessed, eyeing the younger man shrewdly. "If it comes with your blessing for something else I value far more," Gabriel replied, his gaze shifting to Zara. Thomas chuckled. "You always were direct, Hayes." He looked between the two young people, seeing the love that had survived 7 years of separation. "You have my blessing assuming my daughter wants the same thing." All eyes turned to Zara, who had been unusually quiet. "I was prepared to marry a man I didn't love to save our ranch," she said slowly. "Now I find myself free to choose." She looked at Gabriel, her eyes shining with emotion. "And I choose you. I've always chosen you, even when you weren't here to be chosen." 2 months later, on a perfect autumn day, Zara Montgomery became Zara Hayes in a ceremony attended by half the county. The territorial marshal served as Gabriel's best man, while her father, his arm still in a sling but healing well, proudly walked her down the aisle. As they exchanged vows beneath the old oak tree where they had first confessed their feelings as teenagers, Zara felt the weight of the past 7 years lift from her shoulders. Frederick Harrington and Victor Blackwood were awaiting trial in Denver, their criminal enterprises exposed and their power broken. "I promised I'd come back for you," Gabriel whispered as he slipped the gold band onto her finger. "Some promises are meant to be kept." "And some are meant to be broken," she replied, thinking of the betrothal she had nearly honored at the cost of her own happiness. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing under the stars. When the last guest had departed, Gabriel led his bride toward their waiting carriage. "Where are we going?" Zara asked, noting the luggage secured to the back. Gabriel smiled, the same smile that had captured her heart all those years ago. "Denver first. I have some business investments to finalize, then San Francisco to see the ocean you've always dreamed of, and after that, wherever you want to go." "And then home?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "And then home," he confirmed, pulling her close. "To build the life we always planned." As the carriage pulled away from the Montgomery ranch, Zara leaned her head against Gabriel's shoulder, content in the knowledge that some journeys, no matter how long or difficult, lead exactly where they're meant to. 5 years later, Zara stood on the porch of their home on the combined Montgomery Hayes ranch, watching Gabriel teach their 4-year-old son Thomas to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter Elizabeth clung to her skirts, eager to join her brother but still too small for her own mount. The ranch had flourished under their joint management, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. The evidence Gabriel had gathered against Harrington and Blackwood had led to their conviction and imprisonment, bringing justice to the families of the miners who had lost their lives due to their negligence. Thomas Montgomery had officially retired the previous year, though he still lived in a comfortable cottage on the property and delighted in spoiling his grandchildren. The hardships of the past seemed distant now, like a story someone else had lived. As Gabriel lifted their son from the pony and set him on his feet, both of them laughing at some shared joke, Zara felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was the life she had always wanted, not the wealth and status Harrington had offered, but love and family and purpose. Gabriel looked up, catching her eye across the yard. Even after 5 years of marriage, that look still made her heart skip. He said something to their son, who ran toward the house shouting excitedly about his riding lesson. "Mama, Mama, I stayed on all by myself." Thomas announced proudly as he reached the porch. "I saw, darling," Zara assured him, smoothing his dark hair so like his father's. "You're a natural horseman." Gabriel followed at a more sedate pace, scooping up Elizabeth when she ran to meet him. "Just like her mother," he said, joining them on the porch. "Fearless and determined, qualities that serve one well in this life," Zara observed, accepting his kiss with a smile. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Gabriel and Zara sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. His arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him, a familiar pose that never lost its comfort. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come back when I did?" Gabriel asked quietly. Zara considered the question. "Sometimes. But then I remember something my father once told me, that true love finds its way even through the hardest circumstances." "Wise man, your father," Gabriel murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "He is," she agreed. "Though he also once told me I should marry Frederick Harrington," Gabriel chuckled. "No one's perfect," Zara smiled, turning in his arms to face him. "Do you remember what you said to me that day by the creek, when you first returned?" "I said many things that day," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Most of them desperate attempts to win back your heart. You said you came back to claim what was yours," she reminded him. "Your heart, that I'd had it since we were 18 and you'd come to take it back or to give me the rest of you to go with it." Gabriel's expression softened with the memory. "I meant every word." "I know," Zara said simply, "and every day since then you've proven it." She took his hand and placed it over her heart. "My heart has always been yours too, Gabriel Hayes. From the moment we met, through every separation and reunion, through every joy and sorrow, it has always belonged to you." As Gabriel pulled her close for a kiss that still held all the passion of their first, Zara knew with absolute certainty that some promises were meant to be kept, some bonds never meant to be broken. The journey had been longer and more difficult than either could have imagined, but it had led them exactly where they were meant to be together, under the vast Montana sky, their hearts finally and forever claimed by love.